Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for January 2nd through 8th. This week I read 1 book, I watched 5 shows, I watched 6 movies, and I listened to 1 book. The book I read with my eyeballs this week was an arc of Reckless Girls, which actually came out this week. Apparently it was also a Book of the Month book for this month as well, not that I can get that service in Canada. This book starts out about this one girl who followed this boy that is really hot and she's in a relationship with to Hawaii, and they've been there for about 6 months when she unceremoniously gets fired from the job that she's at. Their whole plan was to take his boat and kind of sail around the world and live this wonderful adventurous life. However, a couple of things happened to the boat when they got to Hawaii, so it's not sailable, so they've been kind of waiting until they can get repairs done. Then all of a sudden he meets these 2 girls, they decide to hire his boat so they get it fixed, and they go to this deserted island in the middle of nowhere that has kind of a sketchy history. However, this sounds like a fantastic adventure, and when they get there they're surprised to find that there are 2 other people on another boat already there. But they all make friends. It's all good. And then we get to learn some of their backstories, and you kind of think maybe it isn't all good. When a mysterious 7th person also comes to the island, things start to go down. What I really liked about this is it was split up between now and then, and we got to see the then of some of the other characters instead of just sticking with the main character. There were also some really great twists, at least one that I saw coming, but I really liked how it happened, and if there wasn't this one little nugget kind of in there to justify it near the beginning, I could understand how other people wouldn't see it either. This is both very slow paced, but it really keeps your attention, and once things ramp up you really need to know what's happening and who these characters are. On to the shows I watched this week. I watched at least a couple of episodes of Penny Dreadful. I believe episodes 6 and 7. We didn't get very far, we just kind of watched a couple of episodes last Sunday, probably while my last video was exporting, to be honest. And so far I'm still very entertained with this dark show that also has to do with different classics that some of them I've actually read, which is rare. I also finished the 6th season of Queer Eye last week. I'd only watched the first couple. This week I watched the other 8. This is always just delightful and wholesome. This season is obviously different because it started just before the world shut down and then it came back, and the weirdest thing about this is not seeing anyone ever wearing masks, but then you have to remember that this is Texas, and they very proudly declaimed that nobody has to wear masks there ages ago, so there's that. I didn't like that we had to get until the 6th episode before we heard anything about anyone being vaccinated, and it was just a throwaway line. But other than that, this was a fun season. I like that we got to see a different type of episode when we got to the high school episode, and I like that they continue to play with the format. We also watched the first couple of episodes of the 2nd season of The Witcher, and again, we did that last Sunday. Do I really remember much? No. As a side note, I usually try to film these before my roommates wake up, but I didn't do that today. They are awake and they're doing chores, so if at any point you hear weird noises or loud music starts playing, hopefully I don't get a copyright strike. This week the majority of my watching was both seasons of Ted Lasso. Now, I had heard of this show before, I knew that people liked this show before, but literally nobody told me anything about this show before, so I went into it not knowing anything. I didn't know who was in it, I didn't know what it was about, I didn't know that the characters are absolute gems and I love every single one of them, with the exception of the one that you definitely hate by the end of the 2nd season, except for I'm looking forward to his redemption arc in the 3rd season, hopefully. And of course I didn't know that Anthony Stewart Head played an absolute knobhead in this one, so if I had known any of those things ahead of time, I would have watched this a lot sooner. For those of you who might not also know, Ted Lasso is about this man who used to coach a football team in America, and then he's recruited to coach a UK football team. Yes, those are different sports. However, the team manager actually inherited the team that she has because of an ugly divorce, and she basically wants to run it into the ground. However, Ted Lasso is too good for that. Even though this isn't a sport he actually understands whatsoever. The characters, the character growth, the interaction between certain characters, I loved this show. I need more immediately. In addition, this week we got the first premiere episode of the 14th season of Drag Race, and can I tell you that I hate that they split up the premiere? Like, sure, if you wanted to do 7 people and 7 people, that's fine, but you need to do a double feature for your premiere because that was bullshit and I hated it. Essentially, this premiere episode is the same thing as every other premiere episode, except for they only bring in the first half of the cast, and they do a photo shoot like they usually do, and then they did a talent show in this case. And their guest judge was Lizzo, so it had that going for it, but I hated this format. If you're going to split split up the premiere like that, make it a double feature, because I hated the fact that we still have to wait another week to actually finish the premiere. On to the movies I watched this week, the first one being The Matrix Resurrections. This one was fun. The first half of it was very fun because it's making fun of itself in a lot of different ways, and one of the biggest things that drew me to actually watching the fourth one is Keanu is still there and Neil Patrick Harris is there for some reason. So I was like, cool, I will watch it, even though the second and the third movies, I could not tell you what happened in those movies and I don't really care. And that also sums up the second half of this movie. Besides the self-referential stuff that happened in the beginning, which was funny, but also there was too much of it, it was just another action flick that kind of bent time and space or whatever the hell is happening in The Matrix. Honestly, I cannot give you a synopsis of this series. I just can't. And that's fine. This week we also watched The Hateful Eight, which is a super long Quentin Tarantino movie about these people that are bounty hunters and other people that they may or may not trust, and it's kind of set as an old western, and they all get snowed into this one place, and then, you know, maybe people start murdering each other for reasons. This did keep me entertained because it introduced these elements of mystery, and I wanted to know who did what and for what reason. This also had elements of monologuing that I very much enjoyed. It is a very bloody movie, it is very dark, so if those aren't your things, you're not going to want to watch this. And it's also set in a time frame where it's just totally fine to call Samuel L. Jackson everything under the sun that we wouldn't in polite society today, so there's that. For the record, at least from media appearances, I know he doesn't give a fuck about that because that's any other Tuesday to him, but it's still pretty uncomfortable. Especially because this isn't the type of movie that tries to change people's views about that. The next four movies are split up into groups of two. I watched Kick-Ass and Kick-Ass 2. I had only actually seen Kick-Ass before, I hadn't seen the second one. These are fun action movies. They did not age very well in some of the content. For example, in the first one there is this whole plot where a girl assumes our main character is gay and he pretends he is so he can like have sleepovers with her and get close to her, and that was disgusting. And then of course when he comes clean about that, it's just fine, and that's garbage and I hated it. This franchise also suffers from the yes, there's a crap ton of property damage but nobody really seems to care or keep anybody accountable for it syndrome, and there's that. In the second movie there was some age fuckery because it's supposed to be a couple of years later, maybe, but I already thought the main character was about to graduate high school and apparently he was a couple of years younger than he was, and then the girl who is in this ages like 4 years but it's only a couple of years later, and then our main antagonist is just the whiniest 20-year-old motherfucker that I've ever seen in my life. It was, however, very fun to see Jim Carrey in this movie because I haven't seen him in a role quite like this before, so that was entertaining. The other movie and first sequel that I watched was John Wick and John Wick 2. Now, I had seen John Wick before and I understood, like, okay, yes, this is an action flick that only exists because of this one bad thing that happens near the beginning. Cool. And then I learned they kept making more of them and I was like, but how? How can you go from that plot to something else? And I guess it makes sense a little bit. You kind of get more into the depth of the world of who he is and what his background really is, but it's still just another thing about him having to go kill people, so it's Keanu, it's fun. I enjoyed these. These are actually wonderful action flicks, and if you sit there and try to count how many people have died, I gave up somewhere in the 20s because it just became too complicated to actually keep track because it happens so quickly. I opened a Letterboxd account so I could start tracking my movies on that. I gave John Wick a 5 and I gave the second one a 4.5 just because I had kind of an issue with how it ended, and for seeing the third one my suspension of disbelief is kind of taken out of it just a little bit, but I really enjoyed these. On to the book I listened to this week. That was The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. This book is about a character who is a single parent. She's a freelancer, she does not have a lot of spare time, and she hasn't really done all that much dating. However, she works in this local coffee shop with her best friend who is also a romance writer, and I loved Fizzy. Fizzy was a fantastic character. And there's this guy that comes in at 8:24 every morning to get an Americano, so obviously they've been calling him Americano in their heads. And when they find out that he's the lead on a dating app, they're kind of shocked because he doesn't seem like the type. However, one day they finally interact, they learn more about the dating app, and it turns out that Fizzy really wants to go to the headquarters and learn more about it because she's a romance writer and she wants to put this into a book. And from there, our protagonist's dislike towards this guy goes to an extreme level when she finds out that she is actually a match for him. This was fun and I believed the stakes. I loved that she had this wonderful support network of people behind her helping her out. I loved her kid, I loved her best friend. The love interest was super wonderful, and when we got to the conflict in the third act, it was completely believable. People were communicating. I enjoyed this book. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!